Hey guys, Chris with Nichols Retirement Empire, putting on my sunglasses because it is a just absolutely gorgeous sunny day. I'm gonna go do my walk. Today, January 28th, is it's really a sad day for if you live in the South. It was on this day 6 years ago that the infamous Snowmageddon occurred. And, you know, we like to look back at it now and laugh, but in my opinion, that infamous day set the South back in the eyes of the rest of the country probably 150 years. It was a day where we went to school. I was working at a high school at that point, and I was a administrator. They had predicted that it would snow. But it wasn't going to be like until, you know, on into the evening. So they had school, and it started snowing. And I remember I was on lunch duty, and when it started snowing, and everybody was all happy, you know, because yes, it is really going to snow, like they said. And by the end of my lunch duty, the ground was totally covered. You couldn't even walk between the buildings. And it was very apparent very quickly that we had made a very bad mistake by coming to school that day, because there's nothing worse than them calling off school and then it looks like this all day long, and everybody talks about what idiots the school administrators are for calling off school, or the superintendent or whatever. So it began to snow so fast, and there was so much snow that nobody could get anywhere. And we ended up with, you know, depending on where you lived, up to like 12 inches of snow. I mean, it was a lot of snow. Even for people up north, they would have said, that's a pretty big snow. But for us, it was like, you know, nuclear winter. You know, it was just crazy. You would have thought, and it's not like we've never had snow before, but you would have thought like it had snowed 2 feet, and it was an ice storm, and we were in Hawaii. The way people were, it was just the wildest thing. We have cell phones and everything where we have more connection with other people and more safety than ever before. In the past, when we've had snowstorms, I never recall anywhere where people just, you know, got out of their cars and didn't pull their car off to the side of the road. I mean, left their car sitting on the freeway and walked. And of course, once one person does that, you know, and another person thinks, well, he did it, you know, so I'm gonna, and all of our cars on the freeways were just left abandoned. And cars on the road, you couldn't get down any road. The buses couldn't get kids home. School administrators were having to stay and keep kids at the school overnight. Because the parents couldn't come to get them. It wasn't that the roads were just completely, you know, if you had a four-wheel drive or you could travel on the road, it wasn't iced over. It was the fact that everybody just stopped and blocked all the roads and went home, you know, and walked home. You know, because in the past, you got the idea where if you couldn't make it on this road, I'm going to pull over in this parking lot and park my car. I'm not going to stay out here and just put my car in park and start walking home. No, you got into a, you know. But anyway, then the reaction of the media was the absolute, I mean, you would have thought, you know how the media is now, you know, everything is a bombshell, you know, everything is just crazy. It's all over the top, the way that they treat stories. And, you know, they were freaking out about it. And, you know, they're flying their helicopters around and showing the, you know, I-75 is like a graveyard of cars covered in snow. Their reporting compounded the fear and the, you know, panic of all the people. Everybody was, what am I gonna do? You know, and I had to leave my car. They made it look like it was like one of these hurricanes. And they're just showing the destruction and everything left behind by this, you know, by the tsunami waves and the flooding and all the wind devastation by the hurricane, you know. And it was, look at this look at the destruction and the horror. There's only one problem with that. The problem is it was just snow. Now, to me, the culmination of all this insanity, in my mind, I'll remember it today, is they managed to hold a press conference with the governor. And, they were just going on and on about emergency services and what are we going to do. And it was a dire situation, because if you had a heart attack, how am I going to get to the hospital? I'm not saying it was not a bad situation. Don't get me wrong. Don't misread me here. And it was bad, okay? But not to the level of bad that they were making it. So they're going crazy and panicking and all this kind of stuff. And I'm sure everybody else in the country, if they could have seen our local channels, they could have seen. I bet they were not just sitting back with their arms folded going, what? What are they doing down there? Those people have lost their minds. And all their microphones and all their cameras and all those reporters were armed with their questions, about how could this happen? I mean, that was one of the questions. How could this happen? How could this happen here to us? You think it's going to happen to somebody else. You never think it's going to happen to you. Basic premise was, it was like it was the state's fault or the governor's fault, like, why didn't we have enough ice trucks? Why didn't we have enough sand trucks? Why isn't there an army of people to go out there and take all these? Are you going to declare a state of emergency? What are we going to do? Are we going to bring the army in? Has the president been notified? How is this going to affect the next election? They're asking all these things. And one of the first questions that they asked was, how are we gonna take care of this? We have all these cars, on the interstate. What is the state gonna do? What are we gonna do? What steps are we taking to be able to clean up this, this mess and this disaster? And the governor looked at them and said, he said it's gonna melt in a day or two. And I guess at that point, people can go pick up their vehicles and take them home. Nobody had in their mind gone into the future a day or two to where the sun was going to be shining and the snow was going to melt and all this would just be gone. It wasn't the zombie apocalypse. There weren't going to be cars everywhere on the side of the road left abandoned for years to come, and it's going to melt and people can go get their cars and take them home. That's the plan. I loved it. And it was so funny because of the way he treated the media, because the media really does jump on top of that. The media today, it just blows my mind how they do things, what they say. Like, here's what they remind me of. They remind me of a bunch of kids on a middle school bus. And I was an administrator for a long time, so I have seen hundreds of bus videos and how kids act on buses. And this is very typical of the way kids will act on a bus, especially in middle school. They like to insult each other and make fun of each other. So what you will end up having is, let's say, two boys. It doesn't have to be boys, it could be girls. But let's say you got two kids and they're going back and forth and insulting each other. And what happens is, one kid will say something, like, man, your mama's legs are so hairy, she blah, blah, blah. And, the other kids, when they see this going on, they're like the onlookers. Okay, so the onlookers will say they're the media. Okay, so the media is looking on to see what. So one side goes, man, your mama's legs are so hairy, she's, and all the people that are watching go, oh. And then the other one says, oh yeah, well, your mama's so fat. And then they say something and they go, oh, and they, it's a little louder, a little more. And then the next one says something and it's like, oh, they get more and more. And then finally it gets to the point where somebody will say something that is so funny and so good and so insulting that everybody on the whole bus will just be going, ah! I mean, yelling, doing flips. I mean, don't ask me how, I don't know how they do flips on a bus, but they would, I swear, they would be doing flips in the seats, jumping over the seats, yelling and screaming and just doing all this stuff. He's going, wah! I mean, they would just go nuts. And that's the way the Snowmageddon story was. The Snowmageddon story was the media going, wah! And jumping all over the bus from seat to seat and hanging their arms out the window, sticking their heads out and screaming and doing flips because they were so excited about this story and about what they had just heard and seen. And they go totally over the top about whatever the story is, whatever the bombshell is. So in Atlanta 6 years ago, the bombshell was Snowmageddon. What are we going to do about this? How are we going to prevent this in the future? I don't have an answer for how we're going to prevent a significant snow. Why weren't we prepared? Well, it was Georgia. And thanks for watching Nichols Retirement Empire here in the sunny South, where we don't know how to act if it snows. And don't care. I don't care if I know. I don't care if you make fun of me. Bye.